Everybody, and welcome to our week number 2 Twitch live stream for my research methods class. Thank you so much for those of you who are on here with me live on this beautiful cloudy day. It's very nice outside. I see that we even have a chance of like rain this weekend, so I'm very excited about that. I hope everyone is doing well and hanging in there. We are 1 week down of our semester, which is kind of exciting. And so what I want to do today is talk a little bit, let's see if I can reduce that glare. There we go. Talk a little bit about last week and give you some feedback, and then we'll look at what we have going on this week. But first, can I make sure, can you all hear me and see me okay? Can someone like let me know in the chat or give me a thumbs up that everything is coming through just fine before we keep going? I got a yes. That's perfect. Thank you. Okay, great. I'm so glad. The internet at school wasn't fantastic, so I had to run home. So you might get my cats today. We'll see what happens. So sorry to be a minute or so late. But let's go ahead and head over to Canvas together. And if you're joining me for the first time on here on Twitch, the chat is the way that you can communicate with me during this. If you have any questions or thoughts or comments or anything, please feel free to put them in there and I will answer them, of course. But let's go back to Canvas together, and here we are. And week number 1 is done, right? So week 1 done and in the books. We are now in week number 2. And what I typically will do is on Mondays, once the week has ended, I will grade everything from the previous week. So what you hopefully saw was that on Monday, your grades populated for discussion number 1, and I sent out a little email with some feedback in general about things that I saw. And then on these streams, I'll just give you a little feedback on here and kind of explain, and it's a great chance if you have any questions about anything from last week. And then what we'll do is then talk about what we have going on this week. So let's go back to week 1 for just a moment. Pretty and like straightforward week. You had 1 chapter to read plus the lecture and lecture video, and then 1 discussion. So the discussion for last week is worth 15 points like always. And I did go through and grade all of them and some general feedback of things that I saw. A lot of you got like 13, 14, 15 points, which is fantastic. A lot of people doing a wonderful job. Some really interesting stories and headlines that a lot of you found wonderful. I love it. Great opportunity to start thinking like a critical or smart consumer of information as we kind of start building into our topics here. The biggest thing that I saw that people lost points on was some of you just kind of summarized the article rather than critiquing it, if that makes sense. So what I saw was some of you just kind of summarized it and told me whether you agree or not, rather than maybe thinking about it through more of like a critical consumer lens, where you were questioning the claims they were making, or do they have an agenda, kind of being skeptical. That was the biggest reason that people lost points. Another thing that I saw was some of you just didn't quite give me enough. If I gave you the feedback of give me a little bit more, or I was hoping for a little more, try and elaborate in your responses this week. Give me a little bit more than you did last week. And then a few of you also did not respond to a classmate. So if you missed those 2 points for not doing a peer response, those are kind of an easy 2 points to get. It's a much lighter. So just make sure that you're consistently doing that so you don't miss out on those points. And again, don't stress if you missed a couple of points on the first discussion. We're still kind of, dialing it in for what I'm looking for and expecting. These extra credit opportunities with these Twitch streams would make up for those points very easily. And hopefully it just all gets better from here. But a lot of you, pats on the back, did really, really well and should be really happy with that first score. So in the announcement for this week, I also sent out to you how you could find your grade. So if you aren't sure where your grade is, right here where it says week number 2, the announcement that went out on Monday, there is a link in here to how to find your grade and getting your feedback. All of that is there. So if you're having a hard time finding it, maybe go see if you can watch the little video I made on there, and that should really help. Okay. Sorry, I felt like my voice is all scratchy. I've been fighting like a sinus infection, and I think all the weather changes, it's affecting me. So sorry for that. Hopefully you can still hear me and everything is fine. Any questions at all about last week before we move on to week number 2? The only other comment I have while I wait for a moment here is a lot of you did the extra credit question, which I think is fantastic. As I mentioned, those points are just going to add up and maybe take the pressure off of like a discussion or an exam. So hopefully you can keep doing that. That's wonderful. I love it. All right, anything about week one? Anything at all before we jump to week two? I'll wait like 30 more seconds and then I'll move forward. Squash. Oh, I saw a cat. I got excited. But I think they know better than to come to me when I'm on the computer. They know that I'm going to hold him up and show him off to the world, right? And so they run away from me. Such cats. If she comes anywhere near me, I'll grab her. Otherwise, let's go ahead and go to week number two. This week, we move on to chapter two. And I have divided up chapter two into two parts because part one and part two have kind of a slightly different focus. And I think this will give us a good opportunity to kind of, again, kind of ease into some of these topics. So for this week, make sure you read chapter 2, part 1, which is pages 23 to 38. Read through my lecture and watch the lecture video. So remember, you're always doing those three things with every chapter. Read the chapter, read the lecture, watch the lecture video. And page 1 of the lecture is always the objectives and summary. So here we're looking at the topics of like research versus our own experience, intuition versus research, kind of building into that. The Beyond the Book page, I have a little bit here about science versus pseudoscience, some elements of what makes things scientific, evaluating the credibility of sources with a little video. And remember, anytime I give you a video or anything like that, please make sure you watch it. It's going to be helpful for you in understanding the materials. And then the last page is the key terms and review. These are all the terms from chapter 2, part 1 that you can expect to see on the exam. So if you wanted to study a little bit at a time as we go, these would be the terms to study from this first part of chapter 2. So you can listen to it or read through it, but make sure you go through that lecture. And then also watch my lecture video. I try to keep these kind of brief, but it's me lecturing to some PowerPoint slides. You might want to consider taking notes. These are going to be really helpful for you in understanding the materials for the week, and you'll see that stuff on the exam. So hopefully you find them to be helpful as well. All right, so once you have read chapter 2, part 1, and you've watched the video, the next task for this week, as with last week, is the discussion. So you can count on a discussion every single week. So this one for discussion number 2, as always, you have my instructions up here at the top, followed by a little video. So with the instructions here, what you'll want to do, as again, is kind of I talked about last week, think about these as little mini papers, be really, comprehensive in your response, elaborate, and really show off your understanding of the materials. If you lost a couple of points last week for not giving me enough, give me a little bit more here. I think it's better to give me too much. I will never take off for too much, but you don't want to not have covered enough. And then don't forget to also read through a minimum of 5 of your classmates' responses and reply to one of them to get those 2 points, right? And you'll be doing that every week. And there's a rubric and a sample here if that's helpful for you. But watch my little video. I gave you some information about it. And then for the actual discussion, you'll see your prompts right here. So you're going to read these articles and excerpts on science versus pseudoscience. So if we click on that, you can see there's a little article here about what is pseudoscience. And I have read it to you out loud if that is helpful. You can listen to it. There's a second article about the demarcation problem. And then a third very brief one about distinguishing science from pseudoscience. So make sure that you look through all of these, read through or listen to them. And once you have done that, along with the reading for this week, you can answer the 3 questions for this discussion. So number 1, what are some of the key differences between science and pseudoscience? Note, I'd like you to give me a minimum of 2 differences, and then make sure you also explain. Don't just list them, but explain the differences as well. Number 2, what is the demarcation problem and who first identified it? And then number 3, what are some of the problems with the science versus pseudoscience classification? Again, provide a minimum of 2 of those problems and make sure that you explain. Okay, so answer all 3 of those when you're ready. You can hit reply. And then don't forget to also reply to a classmate. So let's say you really like what Haley had to say. You could reply to her, as many of you already have. But these are a big part of your grade. So as always, make sure that you're really showing off your knowledge and understanding. She's close. I'm going to see if I can grab her. Hold on. If I come back empty-handed, she ran from me. Squash. Squeeze. Caught one. So this is Squash. She's my least friendly cat, but I managed to grab her. So this is Squash, the one girl cat. Squash, Squash Carrots is her full name. And look, and now she'll never come near me when I'm on the computer again. But look, I got one of them. My favorite one, Rolly. He took off too. So thanks, Squash. What a good cat. Right? The kids wanted to call her Water Bottle, and I said no. They were much younger at the time. So that was Squash, and look, she's still here. She didn't run away. I'll take it. So anyway, the one advantage of being at home, right? I can bring those pets in. So anyway, sorry, I got distracted by cats. I will grab them whenever I'm home. It's always nice to have a cat distraction, right? And I have 4 of them, so the likelihood is decent. So of course, make sure you do discussion number 2 and post your responses to that. And think about that in like an in-depth way. And that's really like your biggest task for this week. So weeks 1 and 2, we follow that same format of you have a chapter to read, a discussion, and then there's the extra credit, which we'll talk about in a moment. Next week, we do have one more element. We'll have a homework assignment for the first time, but I'll talk about that next week when we have our next Twitch live stream on Wednesday at 12:30 next week. For now, are there any questions at all for me? I do have a couple of reminders for you, and I'll give you that extra credit question. But let me see, are there any questions at all for me at the moment? Again, usually these will be like 25, 30 minutes, much shorter than last week where we were going through everything. But while I'm waiting for you to see if you have any questions, I have 2 reminders for you. So the first one, if you haven't figured out the subscription piece yet, I really appreciate if you have the time to do that. As I mentioned last week, kind of selfishly, this helps me so much in saving time. So I really appreciate those of you who have figured that out. I know it's a little bit of a pain, but if you are able to, thank you. I appreciate that. It saves me a lot of effort. And remember, if you're watching this later because you can't make the time or whatnot, you can still answer the extra credit question if you're subscribed on Twitch. So take a minute to figure that out today if you haven't already. Remember, it's good for 30 days, so I will probably remind you every week just because sometimes people will fall off. But I really do, and again, in advance, appreciate those of you doing that all semester. Thank you for saving me that time. The other one, and I'll put this in the chat, our next Twitch live stream will be on Wednesday, January 24th at 12:30 p.m. Okay, so that will be our week number 3 live stream. And just like this week, I'll go over some feedback from week 2. We'll talk a lot about what we have due next week, including that first homework assignment. So we'll have some time for all of that next week. And then if there aren't any questions, the other thing I have for you is that Twitch extra credit question for this week. So let me pull that up here. I always write it out ahead of time just so that I don't have to write that while I'm talking. I've learned that I'm not the best at typing and talking at the same time. So this is the week number 2 Twitch extra credit question. I'm going to put it here in the chat. Okay. So for the question for this week, describe one of the ways that intuition is biased and give me a specific example. So describe one of the ways that intuition is biased and give me a specific example. And when you're ready to answer that, you'll go to Canvas and you'll click on, since we're in week 2, optional Twitch extra credit number 2. And then you wait. And then up at the top, click on Start Assignment. And it brings up this text box where you can type your response. And as soon as you feel good about it, you can hit Submit. And it brings up confetti. Oh, and 4-leaf clovers for this one. Very exciting. And remember, these are worth 2 points. So if you do this every week, it's like 30-something points of extra credit. That's going to be really helpful for you. And if you're joining me live right now, make sure you put your name in the chat at some point. Unless you're subscribed, then you don't have to worry about it. And remember, if you're joining me by watching this as a recording, make sure you're subscribed to get those potential points. Okay. I also wanted to mention, I'm looking at the chat here. There's a couple of you, like 22 cats, which I love, right? Notice that you see how you only have the little crown next to your name, but not the football cake? That means you still have one more step to do in order to be subscribed. So if you notice that you don't have the football cake, I can show you all really quickly what that last step is. But if you don't have any questions, you don't need help with that, and you're feeling good, you are welcome to get going on week number 2. If you want to see me show her, or him or her, I'm sorry, I don't know, what to do to finish that, you're welcome to stay. Or if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Otherwise, I hope you have a wonderful week, kind of short and sweet today. Enjoy the rainy weather that is coming. I'm very excited for that, and more football this weekend while we still have it. Otherwise, here, let me show you how to do that. So I can't show you on my channel, but I can show you on like a random one. So I'm going to show you on a football channel that I follow for fantasy football. Very into fantasy football. So if I go to this channel, for example, and let me make sure you can see this pretty well on your end. So if you just have the crown, you have one more step to do. Underneath the banner on my Psyched with Setmire page, there's this little purple bar right here. If you click on the down arrow, it brings up an option all the way at the bottom here where you can click on Use Prime Sub and then subscribe for free with Prime. Okay, that's the last step to do. And see how it says 1 month? It's good for 1 month, and then you have to renew it. No, you actually have... no, it's fine. You actually are subscribed on Twitch, right? You have the little crown next to your name. This is just the last step to do. And if you can't do it, that's totally fine. You're joining me live, so you're okay. I just wanted to show, a couple of people had asked me, so I wanted to show you since I had an extra couple of minutes. And again, if you can't figure it out or it's too much, that's totally fine. I just wanted to make sure that you knew what to do. So that is kind of everything that I had for this week. If you have any other questions at all, you're totally welcome to put them in the chat. Otherwise, I will hope to see you Wednesday next week for week number 3. I'm going to minimize my video so I'm not just staring at myself, but I will hang out for a few minutes if you have any other questions for me. Again, otherwise, have a wonderful week, and I hope you're all hanging in there as we ease into the semester, and I'll see you on Wednesday next week. I'm glad you enjoyed meeting Squash. Hopefully next week we can get Binks or Rolly or Whiskey, somebody else in here, right? 4 cats, so we got a chance. I also have a dog too. I'm not sure, she's running around somewhere. Thank you as well. Thank you for being here live with me. I love it. You're welcome. Have a wonderful day, everyone. And I am still here if any of you have questions. I just minimize the video to not stare at myself, but I'm still here. I will hug Squash for you for sure. If she comes back. Oh, look, she's still here. Hi, Squash. sign off because it looks like everyone, except for maybe one or two of you, is gone. But if you think of any questions, feel free to reach out. And again, have a wonderful week.